Hi everyone. I was asked by a viewer, in fact by many viewers, and I have been asked this question before. Why is it that INFJs have a kind of peculiar way of talking? They seem to use more symbolism and analogy than the average person. That often their language is kind of imagistic, evocative, perhaps a little bit less sort of cold, clean-cut and precise than average. It can be frustrating to some of their interlocutors. It can be inspiring to others. It really depends on the particular temperament and disposition of said interlocutor. So there's certainly a lot of truth to this, but some points have to be made. Number one, the majority of INFJs don't always speak like this. They don't always speak like this for a number of reasons. Number one, because they know it's not a very good adaptive strategy in some contexts, depending on the kind of work you have, the kind of social context you're in, you kind of need to switch that off, that part of you. Others repress that particular quality of their language, or they don't develop it, also for adaptive reasons, but maybe you could actually describe these as maladaptive reasons. I'm thinking particularly of compliant INFJs who are concerned to be accepted, inducted into a group, feel like they belong, not experience rejection, ensure that they can have a place. And so often the repression of NI has as one of its symptoms, if you like, an impoverishment of symbolism and an impoverishment of symbolism, metaphor, and analogy in the speech of the INFJ in question. And it doesn't happen all the time, because it often happens that, if you like, and I've made this point before as well, the compliant INFJ often has a secret closet, or a secret drawer in their existence, in their life. It's you could call it the drawer of compensation. And they are sort of proactively adaptive, interjecting FE from a group that they belong to. They imitate really with the purpose of defending themselves, ultimately of protecting themselves. They are aware of it, so they're aware of their not being very authentic, either to the people that they're interacting with, because they're not telling them what is really in their mind, and they're not being ultimately very authentic to themselves, because they are repressing a big part of who they are a lot of the time. That secret drawer, again, well, this is a metaphor, in fact, would be a kind of place where a lot of their, mostly subdued fantasy activity, metaphorical expression, symbolistic attitudes, and analogical comparisons are contained and indulged. So trying to move from metaphor to a concrete reality case, it could be that's an adaptive INFJ or compliant INFJ, same thing, would 95% of the time in their everyday life, in their relations with people, on a sort of daily basis, would be in that mode of adaptive submission. And yet at the same time, they would sort of keep part of the evening when they are by themselves, maybe when they are on the internet, to explore other sides of themselves, where they would turn to more imaginative, creative ways of expressing themselves, orienting themselves to meaning rather than the causal rational transparency, quite meaning devoid of everyday discourse in the modern world. So it's almost like it's slightly schizophrenic, and I don't mean literally, of course, and I don't mean this pejoratively either. There's a kind of schizophrenic relationship to existence where most of the time they are compliant, but they're still a drawer. You see that in a lot of in compliant INFJs. it's probably, in a sense, psychic equilibrium. The maintenance of a semblance of psychic equilibrium depends on that. Nevertheless, when we're not dealing with compliant INFJs, when we're dealing either with secure INFJs or spiritualized INFJs, and in the sort of self-referential, almost exaggerated, don't want to say pathological, because again, I don't want to pathologize. It's not the point, but really kind of overemphasized, kind of extreme fashion in the case of solipsistic INFJs, withdrawn INFJs. In those cases, you will see that language much more on display. Solipsistic INFJs that I've interacted with, many of them, throughout the years, really just they're the best example, because when I say that there's a maladaptive element to it, is that their language, everyday language of speech, is so opposite to that of the compliance that it's maladaptive in the other direction. It's like they almost seem to find it difficult to say anything concrete. They always resort to metaphor when they're trying to explain things. Like, how do you feel right now? And like, you just say that, and they start talking about drops in the ocean and being kind of sucked into a hole, and there's boats that capsize and others that don't, and and it's I've experienced that with a number of them, and it's always very striking. That's why, in a way, and that often happens, sometimes a quote-unquote maladaptive example is the best way to look at the mechanism of a particular personality, because the traits are like hyper emphasized. They're like really exacerbated, so you cannot not see them. And those same traits exist in the other instances of other subtypes, sometimes in more subdued fashion, or very much more subdued fashion, but they're essentially the same traits. So you see that in solipsistic INFJs. The secure and the spiritualized INFJs will tend to be a little bit more sparse in their symbolism. Not sparse in the sense that they don't use it, but they're more, in a sense, they're smarter about it. They use it more naturally, more effortlessly when that is required of them to use it. And the instances where it is required to use it is when they feel like meaning has to be expressed in a particular location of speech or in a situation, where usually people, and again in the modern world with its particular ways, tends to downplay the importance of meaning and the experience of meaningfulness. So, sometimes we are a little bit too used as human beings to speak the technological language of cause and effect, where, like I've said before, people turn into human resources, trees and forests and soil, and turn into natural resources, and you can apply that to wildlife and many other things. And you'd often come across spiritualized or secure INFJs speaking in ways whose metaphoricity, if you like, is an attempt to reinstill the meaning in things, the reverence for being that tends to be very much stifled and smothered by the language of cause and effect, the language of technology, the language of instrumentality, which is so prized nowadays for lots of different reasons. You can talk about capitalism, you can talk about individualism, you can talk about fetishism of merchandise, some kind of Marxist conception. So the INFJ as a meaning-making being is a being who's able to connect to reality through interstices, and that is expressed very often by making contact with external reality, by bringing new meanings into it, bringing new meanings to things. And the INFJ who's spiritualized or secure are well placed for that. Let me know in the comments what you thought, guys. Give me a like if you enjoyed the video. Don't forget that I've written more about INFJs in the modern world, including all these topics that I've just been addressing. The book is called The Infinite Soul, INFJ Life in the Modern World, Authentic INFJ Life in this world that is often seen as hostile. And like I've said, the very strong dominance of the technological currents, cause and effect thinking, instrumental thinking, thingifying everything, objectifying everything, it is hostile, and yet there is a way of dwelling within this world in such a way as to find and create purpose, meaning, and value. And INFJs have a big role to play in this. This is the book to get if you want to explore more. It's pretty cool. It's called The Ecstatic Soul, INFJ Life in the Modern World, which is the deepest investigation you'll find online of the INFJ mind, what it's like to be an INFJ, what it's like to think like an INFJ. Get the book, check the reviews at the link below. As usual, guys, my channel is entirely dependent on your kind support. Please consider supporting me on Patreon. There's a link down there. We are doing new videos, bonus videos every 2 weeks for the community. You can interact with me, with the others. We're starting to get bigger and have really interesting conversations. You help me massively to keep going with my channel. It's not a lot of money to support me, so hopefully you can consider it. In the meantime, take it easy, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.